and went just as deep as I could go from an intellectual standpoint into human design. The irony is, what I'll tell you, that even with all that wisdom on the details of the chart, there's only one part of the chart that actually matters. And it is what is your. So for me, as I'm working with my clients, I will teach them how to speak to their body, speak to their ancestors, speak to God. And what's fun is when you get 3 different answers for the same thing. They come in slightly different voices. But as I navigated the spiritual seeking journey, it was so messy. I spent over $300,000 on different coaches. And so if we go to self-actualization, they've self-actualized and now they're into self-transcendence. And so we are working with a set of humans that are emotionally regulated, that are able to have more compassion and awareness for others, that are able to build systems, that are able to work together, that have let go of ownership.
They are quietly building the systems that, as many more people begin to wake up, begin to better understand who they are and better understand their subconscious programming, that the systems will already be available, will be ready to scale, and will be pretty much, this shift will be almost like a light switch turning on.
Because sometimes when we get caught up in the details of the system, we use the system as a limitation instead of what I really believe it is, which is a system for connection and self-compassion.
It's connecting people with that voice inside of them, or their ancestors, or the universe, or God, or whatever story that you put it around. There is an energy that is capable of communicating with you in a way that allows you to open up a future that is possible.
Welcome to Changing the Channel with Joe Garner, a show about shifting our individual and collective beliefs on what is possible for the future of humanity. As our understanding of how our reality continues to shift, we are at a point of reunification between science and spirituality. What does the world look like when we break free from the generational trauma that has kept most humans playing small for thousands of years and step into our full power as the co-creators of this reality? I always ask that you keep an open mind with this podcast. Ask yourself what resonates with my truth at this time and what does not. Respect your intuition, but see if you can get through the whole show, because there might be that little nugget buried deep in the conversation that unlocks something for you.
Welcome everyone back to another fascinating episode of Changing the Channel with Joe Garner. Today I am joined by a personal friend. We met down in Austin. We had mutual connections and ended up having just a 2-3 hour conversation the first time we met. Just really felt connected. So she is Shebala, Queen of Lions, and she's a medicine woman and prosperity artist. So welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today, Shebala.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
I am doing just wonderful. Doing what I truly enjoy, which is having deep conversations with other souls on the planet.
It sounds awesome.
So we had met, and we kind of met through somebody who was down in Tulum. We both had a connection to, and yeah, exactly. And he had done some human design work with me, and I think you kind of knew him through a whole bunch of different avenues. But we had kind of connected, and you've done this idea of human design readings for me, which every time I get one, it's a profound realization of where I am on my journey and how my kind of innate design is manifesting within inside of me, whether I'm conscious of it or not. So kind of walk us through this journey into human design, how you got into it, who you studied with, and what you believe human design does for people who come across it.
Okay. So yeah, human design is one of 20 modalities that I have studied on this journey of first spiritual seeking and then eventually accepting and stepping into my calling. And when we worked together, we combined human design, but also a little bit of inherited family trauma work and a couple other things. And so for me, human design is best used when it's in combination with other somatic tools. That being said, in and of itself, it's a super powerful system. It is one chart that combines astrology, the I Ching, which is like a 64 numerical system that loosely relates to your potential talents and gifts, either ones that you have or ones that are teaching you in your process of growth here on Earth. We would say that it's what you were given. I still use the terminology of God. My grandma was, or sorry, is, well, was, because she's retired, a reverend. Though I think you remain a reverend your whole life. So I still use God, but God, universe, source. This is how you came in, and it'll show you essentially both on your unconscious and conscious these talents or teachers. It'll show you openness in your chart. So essentially, it's a modified chakra system that'll show me where you're most likely to be conditioned and where you're most likely to be in your own energy. And it'll also show me how you're likely to live your talents, in what areas, funky behaviors. There's quite a bit of detail, your purpose, what will keep you on your karmic path. There's so much detail baked into this chart, but it's essentially the combination of several ancient wisdom systems in one.
Consciousness is the next frontier. And at joegarner.net, we're exploring that frontier. Whether that's through one-on-one coaching, pre-recorded programs, or free utilities to expand your awareness and your consciousness. Join me there and we'll expand what you believe is possible for your human experience. So learn more at joegarner.net and we'll expand your consciousness.
Yeah, and it puts it all together into one system that really helps you understand kind of your, yeah, like you said, your unconscious, um, maybe like pre-programmed or programmed, conditioned belief systems and experiences in life. And what I always enjoyed about your readings, I've had other people kind of have they've gotten into, hey, what's your human design and how that kind of relates. But with you, it feels like you're channeling something a little bit higher when you're going into that human design. Like you're able to actually tune into their energy system from my perspective, at least as somebody who's gotten a reading from you. Like you tune into their energy system and you're using probably these other 19 modalities that you're familiar with to really get a good reading. And I think that's what kind of separates you from maybe someone who's just kind of studied a little bit of human design, is that, you're able to bring all this information in and really get a reading on that person of where they are at that moment in life.
Yeah, for me, what's happening in a reading, and I would really go as far as to say it's not really a reading what I do. And you asked me who I studied with. So I first studied human design. So how you asked a bunch of questions and I only answered one. So how did I get into it? Who did I study with? I got into it because at the time of finding human design, I was a business coach. And so prior to really answering my call and becoming a medicine woman, I was actually a corporate marketer for a decade. So I went to MIT, did my MBA, worked for large brands, the Procter and Gamble's, NBC's of the world, and then left that and became a business coach focused on women, multi-passionate women, trying to maintain their multi-passionate
Mhm.
status while also being successful in usually multiple ventures. And so I was working with a client at the time who was combining actually, she had a hoodoo practice and she was a newborn care specialist. So a spiritual business and then a very, primarily lactation consulting, things like that for moms with newborn sleep training. So two very different businesses on paper, Interestingly enough, now she does combine them both in a really cool way. But at that time, I was quite fearful of anything mystical. So literally, it was like, keep your hoodoo away from me. Anything like tarot cards, like I read cards now. I do a lot of different things now. I would not touch them because if it wasn't Christianity, it was the devil. So, um, what's interesting is both she and my other client, who was the daughter of a Lutheran pastor, they both were using human design. And the way she was using human design, it wasn't lining up with the advice that I was giving her. And I was convinced that whatever the system was, it was screwing her money. And so I needed to learn it, but she was so far ahead that I really needed to learn it at depth. So first, my other client, Rebecca Morrison, she's now a happiness coach. She ended up sharing it with me. Then the lady we were speaking about, Yvonne, she had been working with someone named Jacqueline Michelle, so I studied with her. Then Jacqueline was a great starting point because she's so compassionate with the system. But then as I was reading through, the system itself is not very compassionate. Certainly the gentleman who channeled it was not that way. There were a lot of details that I felt like I'd missed. And as I started studying it for myself from the baseline text, um, and so I did a very uh, type A approach and was like, who is the best in the world? And how much do I need to pay him to help me? And best in the world may not be can we say that or not? I don't know. But certainly the most senior person. So the first person that who the gentleman who downloaded the system taught was Shaitan Parkin. He taught him and one other fellow. Shaitan was the first person to ever be certified directly from the person who downloaded this. He's a best-selling author in the space. And I essentially worked with him over the course of 4 years, did his mentorship program, may have been 3.5, 4 years, did his level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and went just as deep as I could go from an intellectual standpoint into human design. The irony is, what I'll tell you is that even with all that wisdom on the details of the chart, there's only one part of the chart that actually matters. And it is what is your, we call it authority in human design. So authority and strategy, but authority really, which is loosely, how do you follow your intuition and how do you make the best decisions? And once you do that, like once you understand that, that is when human design lines up everything for you. So for me, I did that whole journey, understood all the information, realized that my client was leveraging the system in a way that wasn't working for her. Because sometimes when we get caught up in the details of this system, we use the system as a limitation instead of what I really believe it is, which is a system for connection and self-compassion. And then after about doing like 300 free readings at that time, um, and being like, maybe this thing is real, I was like, okay, well, what if we just do what it says, which is follow this one thing, the sacral, which is your also authority. So 100% trust or it's a no. And it literally broke my entire life and then connected me to my ancestors, led me to learning all these modalities. And I eventually ended up on a hill in Jamaica, meeting all these family members that I didn't know were there and accepted my calling as a medicine woman. That's the short story, but that's what human design ended up doing for me, really getting me to my purpose. But after moving through quite a bit of a journey to get there and to understand my skills. Yes. And I still have one more question to ask, which is how I use it, but I'll stop because I just gave you a lot as I'm going through the initial questions you asked.
Yeah, I mean, so much comes up when you're speaking. So, obviously, I love that you narrow it down to this authority. The how do you connect with, interact with your intuition, and then how do you allow that intuition to guide your life?
Mhm.
For me, I've been an intuition coach for like 2 years now, and that's really my focus. It's connecting people with that voice inside of them, or their ancestors, or the universe, or God, or whatever story that you put it around. There is an energy that is capable of communicating with you in a way that allows you to open up a future that is possible, right? And for me, a lot of times how I kind of conceptualize this is that there's an infinite number of versions of you into the future. And oftentimes, when a version reaches a level of understanding, they're able to communicate back to their past. Just like, let's say you're doing some type of childhood trauma work, and you go back and you have this conversation with your 6-year-old child. Like, in essence, you're traveling back in time in your psyche to have this communication with your 6-year-old child. That's what's happening uh, now in the present moment with future versions of yourself. And again, a lot of times you want to have that discernment of, is this a future version of myself, or is this another type of energy that is coming in that is just communicating with me in a similar way, in that like kind of etheric way, what you would call like an intuitive touch, right? And that is the power that I think a lot of spiritual practices are opening up for humanity, is this ability to communicate with, we'll call it future versions of ourselves, perfected versions of ourselves. You could call it God or the universe, however you want to do that. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that perspective.
The journey to finding myself started with a shift in how I viewed my health. That is why I am proud to partner with Purium, the transformation company. What if you could support your health with a system designed for today's challenges? Purium is more than a supplement company. It's a solution for regenerative health. Their whole food products include the only clinically proven glyphosate detox, helping you eliminate the toxic buildup caused by modern farming. Pair that with Beyond Organic superfoods and the most efficient source of protein on the planet, and you've got a powerhouse combination to build muscle, improve digestion, and fuel your energy levels, all while promoting deeper sleep. Plus, Purium is mission driven with planetary health in mind. They're proud to lead the way in a plastic free movement using biodegradable packaging as much as possible. True health freedom starts here. Experience the power of this regenerative healing system for yourself and witness your own transformation take place. You get 60 days to try it. And if you truly don't feel any benefit, you get fully refunded. I have personally been using the daily Core 4 products and have noticed an increase in my energy and the depth of my sleep. Use the link in the descriptions to get started today and receive at least $50 off your first order over $75.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective. For me, it manifests slightly differently. So in my version of it, so human design specifically is the intuition, if we're going to call it that, yeah, let's call it the intuition for today, the intuition that lives within your body. Um, there's also some things that can show you intuitions that live elsewhere. And so as I look at a chart, I will see couple things. It's how many voices is this person dealing with inside their body? Just first off, right? And many people we've been told, and many people agree that we have like the voice in our head versus what our body is really saying. And about 98% of people ish are really meant to make decisions from their body, if you believe in the human design system. But there are about 2% that do get to make decisions from their head. It's always really fun when I read for them and they're like, I've been trying the yoga and the this and the that. And I was like, your answers are not there.
Hmm.
So, and I'll work with them on other things, which kind of brings me to, for me, what I believe in. we have that conversation that we can have within our body. Human design is great at giving you an initial dose of that. And I say that because if I'm teaching someone human design and they have sacral authority, one of the prompts that I love, this one came from Jacqueline Michelle, was the first person to teach me this specific prompt, is do I have the energy for this right now? But it is still a mental prompt to get to your body, right? So eventually we graduate to this place where we're not like stopping using our mind and trying to tune into our body, but our body just like it just gives us an impulse or a feeling. And it's like, yes, no, okay. And so for me, for you, it's that gut. It's a yes, it's a no. It's a lot of times a no. It's 100%, 99% is a no. And feeling that in the body without having to like be like, oh, let me sit down, meditate, ask my body out loud, tune in, right? Just to get to the place where you can automatically feel it. Um, is to me the true, the true like is I don't I feel like saying magnum opus, but I also feel like I need to look up the definition of that. But it's like the come that I come, that's the place to get to.
Yeah. We'll
Uh
call it the magic.
yeah, it is the magic of that, right? But for me, I also believe that um when I look at the chart, right, multiple voices. So it's like how many voices do you have in your body that may actually be competing with that? So for example, you have a defined heart and the heart is like, I want this. And that's like this really fun pull forward energy and it's strong, but it doesn't know timing. And so for you, you have a part of you that's like, I want this align with my energy, but that part doesn't know timing. A part that's like, it feels really healthy and safe. That part doesn't know timing. And so you're working with these parts, and in your chart, they're all connected, but some people also have disconnected parts. So it's almost like sometimes people will come to me and they'll say, like, I'll look at their chart and I'll know that they're going to tell me they have ADHD because I'm like, I see it. You got a triple split. You got gate 35 that always wants to grow and change and do different things. You got an open head center. I'll know sometimes like that this is how the world will look at someone like that because it is very normal and within some people's design to walk around with three voices in their head, a desire to start and stop things and a desire to do like a bajillion things. And that's some people's design. And when you're like that, the question is, what do you listen to? So human design gives me that on a body level. And then for my clients, I bring in channeling as well. So there's the thing, the impulse in your body, which we call your authority. Some people have gate 57, which is fun. It's like a spidey sense that they say comes from the spleen. It's quite quiet, but it's like, okay, go do this. Then everyone, in my opinion, can actually tune into their ancestors and guides. And those may be different. So for me, I have my ancestors, and I'm talking literally like my great great grandma, who is actually, we missed that part of the story. That's how I got into all of this to begin with, the whole medicine woman path, because she came to me in a vision. Then you've got your guides. To me, that doesn't have to be people who are blood relations or ancestrally related. For me, when I look up my ancestral path, and if people use the terminology past lives, I don't love past lives. I call them ancestral memories, but that's a whole conversation. But ultimately, mine, I have some that go all the way up to Hathor and some that go to Asasea. And I know I also have like a con blood. So it's fun that I have those memories, right? But that's like a whole other set of guides that are not our ancestors. I don't work with them, but I could. A lot of people like working with gods, deities of that realm. And then there is God. So for me, as I'm working with my clients, I will teach them how to speak to their body, speak to their ancestors, speak to God. And what's fun is when you get 3 different answers for the same thing.
Mm.
They come in slightly different voices. So that's why when you say one, I'm like, kind of, and also I will work with all 3 and get 3 different layers. And then the future thing, you could also ask your future self, but that one becomes really gnarly because if I ask my future self who has made $1 million in the next 4 months a question and I get an answer, but then I ask my future self who's made $1 million in the next 4 months with ease a question, I'll get a different answer. It's so
Right.
specific. You gotta be like, and who did this, with ease while maintaining family, dot, 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 dot. Like it's so specific.
Yeah, it's almost
Mm,
it's almost like AI prompt engineering, right? You have to be so specific because you're pulling from a field of information that is so vast that without any specificity, you'll get an answer, but is it going to be the answer that best benefits you? That is up to the prompt.
And then, yep. And it's exactly. And so that's like, I can do that, but I don't really use that one because there's often like an opportunity cost that people fail to think about. You
Hmm.
go that route. And for me, it's very much guidance and primarily using my body. If I don't feel like I can tune into my body or there's just dissonance or something going on, I'll ask my ancestors and guides. And then my ancestors walk with me, send me signals. They come to me as birds, things like that. So
Mm.
that's where I am now. Um, I do think it's one intuition, and also there are many layers and flavors of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just many layers and flavors of the consciousness that is you. Again, you can dig into the DNA if you want to get into like a physical representation. Your DNA is a representation of the entirety of the species. Every a majority of the species that has existed, there's memory of them in your DNA,
Mm.
and that goes through the human evolution as well as past experiences of every iteration that human has been through, the subspecies into the stratum that we exist in, all the way back to single-celled organisms, right? All that information is stored inside of our DNA, and you have access to it if you can get out of the thinking mind and get into the body, get into feeling how that DNA is speaking to you. And I think that's a part of what you're doing, as well as obviously connection to, your ancestors and guides, which I really like this idea of kind of guides going all the way up through the different levels. You could call them densities or levels of existence, all the way up to the one God. I grew up Roman Catholic. I do not shy away from using the word God. However, there's usually an asterisk there that it's not the God of the Christians necessarily. It is the creator, the one that has, the amalgamation of all the information that has ever existed in the universe. That is what kind of represents God to me, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. It's everything, everywhere, all the time.
It's funny because yes, it's that, but for me, God is more of it's not as clear as that anymore. As I've kind of gone through my journey at the beginning, I might have said that in that way. And now the only thing I can say for sure is that God is love
Right.
these days.
Yeah.
The more I know and witness, the more I don't know.
Would you say it's more of a, because I've heard this put about where it's God is the unifying force of the universe that draws more and more complexity into the universe to experience itself, basically. That it's like a magnetic force drawing us together, and that there is a force that's pulling us apart as well, but God is the unifying force.
I definitely would say God is the unifying force. Is there a force that's pulling us apart is a real question for me. I know we create things that pull us apart. And if anything, it's the doubt of the existence of the unifying force that
Right.
becomes its own force that pulls us apart. Like that's kind of where I would, if I had to put it today, that's where I would put it. Um,
Okay.
but
Yeah, the denial of that unifying force is the
he's just
separating
that's
force.
crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had talked about a little bit of this idea of the trifecta of healing
Yeah. Mhm.
a couple weeks ago, and I really wanted to kind of get into what that means to you. How do you use that with your clients? Like what is the trifecta of healing, and how can people at home listening even just get a glimpse of, maybe a session with you?
Oh, a session with me. Okay, two questions. So I'll answer them separately. The trifecta of healing, that is it's my baby. So it's what's coming through in my book, Prosperity Artists. Do not know when it's coming out because it's literally being channeled. And it feels like the culmination of my spiritual seeking journey. So at some point in time, I feel like I know that I graduated from the spiritual seeking journey to what I will just call the being journey. But as I navigated the spiritual seeking journey, it was so messy. I spent uh, over $300,000 on different coaches. I mean, some of that is my approach, which is who is the best person? How could I find them? Can they teach me? And I know I won't call it rushing, but I like efficiency. So I was,
We, we
it's in my chart.
we've
We like efficiency.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked about it. It's like the New York approach to spiritual development, right? It's like, how fast can I get there and what's the cost?
And for me, it came from a place of, it felt like the spiritual seeking journey felt like an interruption in my life. And it was just messing shit up. Like I felt that I was so clear before all of this stuff came. I didn't choose it. Like I wasn't a person that was interested in this stuff and wanted to go on this path. I was literally dragged through it by my ancestors. No choice, forced. Like that's literally what it felt like. And so then I was like, okay, whatever message, like what is the thing that you're
Hmm.
trying to get me to learn? And how do I make it work in this 3D world? Which for me also meant like, how do I either finish this thing so I can go back to my work or make a business or whatever? And so there was a part of me that was also trying to like make it make sense. And in the process, I worked with all of these shamans, gurus, healers, masters in different areas. And there's the special thing that would happen when you look at my chart, it is the fastest learner in human design. And I go through a series of rebirths. And so 3-5, manifesting generator, uh, sleeping phoenix. So for people who know human design, I am like a time bender, fastest learner, learn through trial and error, die and rebirth. And that happened. But what would happen as well is that I would be working with these coaches, healers, gurus, etc. And at some point in time, I would learn the core of their work, or I would understand their medicine deeper than they would. Meaning they would know their medicine, but I would know the application of their medicine in a way that they weren't quite communicating yet. And that was one of my skills that I wasn't aware of. And rather than tell me, like rather than being with me and being like, hey, we're doing this thing together now, we're on the journey together. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them maintained this like funky hierarchy and kept selling me things. And eventually that created my own like little pockets of doubt within me and really hampered my ability to move forward. The other thing is I was looking at them as a source for guidance on all of the things when sometimes they'd mastered one area, but had a really messy stuff going on in other areas. Um, and that I think, especially as a woman navigating this space, would come up with like male practitioners who haven't really cleaned up their man, is what I would say. Like there'd be moments where I'd be like, oh shit, but he's still a man. And his human hasn't cleaned up some things regarding his love journey. And so as I moved through and went very deep, I realized that there were three paths. And yes, they're all interconnected. But if I could parse them out um, separately, then I could streamline my healing journey. I could also practice and understand more discernment when I'm working with people. And I could like understand where I am and it wouldn't be such a mess. So that's what the trifecta is. Three areas of healing that I feel that spiritual seekers are moving through. The first path is the path of your personal power. That's typically what we're talking about when we are moving through the spiritual journey. So that is, I'll use human design language since we started with that today. That's deconditioning yourself. So removing the layers of conditioning you have from other people. Understanding parts of your subconscious mind, understanding the patterns that are moving your body in a way that are not in alignment, that you don't control. A lot of people will talk about the mother wound here, right? Healing that. And then eventually, if you've done your work, going back into ancestry, because this work does go forward and backward. And it's really cool to see it transcend into past generations and to see it moving within your family if you still have living family members forward. So that is the personal power journey. And again, these are all intertwined. So then the next one is partnership. So that's your love journey. And so that one, and you can see how these mix because some people can't really complete their personal power journey if they haven't really sorted out their partnership journey, right? But again, knowing like, oh, okay, I'm on this path. Oh, boom, I bounced here. Now I'm working on this. It's so much more, it's helpful from a mental anchor standpoint. And if you're going to invest in this work, it's really clean. So the partnership journey is essentially everything related to love and connecting with other humans. On all levels. So not just on this plane, but even like things that we would call like past life relationships, things like that. So clearing all of that. And then lastly, because we do live in the 3D world, it's your material journey. I call it your prosperity journey because there's many, to me, it's self-defined prosperity. And there's many different approaches to that. For some people, it really is making money. But for other people, they live in completely different systems of trade, things like that. And so these three, prosperity, partnership, and personal power, are how I help my clients navigate what they're moving through. But then what's beautiful is when you see them as um, different pillars to the same whole, you can really see where people are. So from a mentorship standpoint, you can very quickly, or at least I can, and I'm sure I can teach people to do this, but very quickly be like, okay, that person, they've done really well on maybe their personal power journey, but they're still calling their mother a toxic uh, person who fucked their lives. And maybe, maybe just maybe they still have work to do on their partnership journey. Or that spiritual teacher who's like, money is the root of evil. Nobody who's spiritual can make money. Maybe he still gets to go on his prosperity journey. And so then when you're working with people, you're also clear on kind of where they are and where they're not at peace so that you can make sure that that's not influencing you as well.
Right. And yeah, that's a great map. That's a great system to, simplified. It's not 64 different things and you've got all these interconnecting pathways and all of that stuff. This is simplifying it down to something that is usable, that I think is very accessible to a lot of people. And I think that's where we are right now in humanity is how can we get this down to an accessible level so that maybe 1 billion people or 2 billion people are able to really access that information. I mean, you look at some of the great authors right now. That's what they're doing. They're condensing this hyper complex system that they've learned. They've gone on this 20-year spiritual journey or self development journey, whatever you want to call it. Learned from so many people. Spent $300,000 on all these different gurus and teachers, and they're condensing it down into something that really works, that is easy to understand, and that is capable of creating the change that I think is necessary for humans at this point in history.
Mm.
That it makes it simple. You've got like Michael Beckwith. He takes it into 8 pillars of life, and you kind of simplify those 8 pillars down. You work on one at a time until all 8 are operating at an 8, 9, or 10, and that would be like a fulfilled life. That's what he would call the fulfillment of life. And I love that it's down now from 8 to 3. Now we're getting into numbers that people that are so distracted like myself can really focus on.
Deal with
Is this
grief.
Yeah, is this my personal power? Is this my prosperity? Or is this um
Partner.
the partnership one? And yeah, for me, where I'm at right now, I think is definitely that partnership one. A little bit in the prosperity as well. Again, I know how to be prosperous. I've chose over the last few years to let go of that desire, that call to be as prosperous as I have been in the past. But in that letting go of this one way of being prosperous, I've allowed other ways, ownership of property, rental units, these other ways to kind of come into my life. And they've been showing up in much more consistency over the last year or so.
It's really fun to see because what will happen is you will come in. So many of my clients, they come in saying they are on their prosperity journey. Like pretty much, I would say that I have several different services that people can book. But many of the people who come to book one-on-ones with me will say, I have a prosperity thing that I want to work on. So they'll book me for prosperity artist hours, tell me something's off in their business. And 8 times out of 10, that's not what's going on. Like it is their business, but it's usually related to something partnership wise,
Mm.
love wise, like family wise. And that's what they'll come in saying, hey, I need to sell X many more of these and I'm blocked. And then we will be in love or partnership. And there is oftentimes a dissonance between what you want to be working on and what universe, source, God, guides actually are telling you to work on. And it becomes, can you trust that? But when you know that there are these kind of paths, it's a little easier for your head. And
Mm.
then the question becomes, can you trust? So for me, for 2 years, I got to caretake for my mom. And it was pretty wild because that's what my guide kept telling me to do. Take care of your mom. And I'm like, of course, you're my ancestors, so you want me to take care of my mom. It's like, take care of your mom. But all the guidance was take care of your mom. And that was not what I wanted to do at that time. I wanted to take care of her, but I also wanted to build my business. Like, I thought I was going to launch my candles and I was going to do my thing. And I was like, when do I get to do that? You know, like we've lined everything up. When is that happening? And the depth that I learned in that 2 years of choosing to follow guidance and to stay on, we'll call it the partnership path, that unlocked so many things for my prosperity journey. And in that path, I ended up focusing on just one or two clients, and they ended up becoming more marketing for me than anything I could have done in those 2 years. And so it's pretty wild how, when you're saying, okay, got it, I want to be on this prosperity path, but everything is pushing me towards the partnership work. And for me, it was even harder because I felt like I had done my partnership work. And this was the part where it's going back, right? Like going back. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think that was going to be an active thing. I thought I was going to do the work and it was just going to happen. That's like, oh, I guess in my journey, it's active. And it was very active. It was, I took my mom to 220 appointments in 1 year. So it was very active, you know. But
And part of that journey, you were flying back to Miami from Austin and
yeah,
like
we flew, we moved her. She had 3 surgeries. It was an initiation of itself. It was all the journeys in one. But but the focus was on partnership. And I say that because I also got to make medicine for her as a medicine woman. So like I
from your great grandmother, I'm sure. Like,
my
you know,
mother doesn't give me formulations, but yes, that's where the wisdom was from because she knew all the plants. Though there are some things that popped in actually as we moved
Hmm.
through some guidance from other sources. Apparently, she was always told them that you never need more than 3 leaves from a single plant, which is wild because that means you're really leveraging the energetics of the plant and not just like the medicine, you know? So,
Mm.
so either way, but yeah, so things came in, but it felt like a very lonely journey as well in many different ways. But it was exactly what I needed. But it was a partnership focused, like a partnership focus that also unlocked all these different things. And that's why I say they're still connected. But that's not if you had asked me, how is this going to work? I would have never told you this is how it would come together. And so, but the knowing of like, okay, I'm still moving forward on my spiritual journey in some kind of way was very helpful.
And I think that's a probably very common theme among all spiritual journeys. You know, your mind fabricates this linear pathway to get to where it needs to go on your spiritual journey, and the universe, your guides, you know, your higher self basically says that's not the path that's going to get you there. And I think they're doing it, and you would probably agree, you know, the path that you took versus the path that you thought you needed to take, the difference between the length, the ease, the amount of effort that it took are probably very, very different. Not to say that one was, you know, maybe less difficult than the other, but where you are right now was probably a little bit, it feels like it was easier than if you had gone off and said, all right, I need to go out and get a marketing team and a PR team, and I need to make, you know, we need to be having $100,000 months in the next 2 years
Yeah.
versus where you are right now in the journey that it took to get to right here.
In terms of my business, so I would say like I probably put in the same amount of effort, except that I put it into supporting my mom versus
Right.
into building an entire business. And though, however, the business, this kind of gets into like what I call active manifestation versus flow or a more passive form of manifestation. But essentially, yeah, you're right. Because the structures that I would have built and everything that I would have built to get to the place I am now, my business would have been wholly unnecessary. I wouldn't have known that, but
Right.
it really would have been completely unnecessary. And I would have done a bunch of work that, yeah, was not necessary. and,
Yeah.
and then if, knowing me, I would have still also tried to take care of mom too. So I would have been doing both of them and probably either burning myself out in the process or not doing super well at one.
Yeah. Or both, risking that real possibility that you burn yourself in one, you're going to burn yourself out in the other one as
Yeah.
well.
Or I would have like outsourced it to someone so that I could do them both, but not gotten any of the lessons.
Right. Yeah. Well, we have had a wonderful conversation, and I do want to get into, there's always one question that I ask every guest at the end
Okay.
of the show, and it is really about, you're bringing medicine into the world, you're bringing these practices into the world, if and when you get this information out and people start to do the actual healing, and, where do you see the future of humanity? What do you see
Ooh.
this journey culminating in, or even if it's just the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, like, how do you see humanity evolving over these next couple of years as people start to do this healing work? They start to uh, remember their ability to tune into their intuition, to tune into guides, to tune into these guiding forces in their life, and
Yeah.
are doing this healing work on themselves.
So this is if everyone were to adopt these practices, right?
Yeah, let's follow the timeline of people do the work, do the healing, follow spiritual guidance, and kind of maybe let go a little bit of this conditioning or programming that has been involved in
Yeah.
the Western world.
It's a hard answer because, like, the reality is, I don't know. There's two options, right? One is it's really interesting that when you adopt new practices, there's a whole set of humanity that likes to resist them and fear them. So
Mhm.
there's the version where we're still fighting and where you're basically breaking into two worlds. One that is like super compassionate, um, working together, uh, trying to like save the environment, etc., and one that's completely resisting it. And who wins out, right? But if we're in my fantasy world, then what happens is that people adopt these practices. So, you asked what happens in a session with me, and the people that invest and have the time with me, they leave that session understanding different practices to connect on their own, and they don't actually need to have any more sessions with me because they have their own internal guidance system. When we are following that internal guidance system, it may take some time depending on where someone is on their healing journey. So there's an arbitrary number that comes from human design that's like 7 years. Interesting. It takes about 7 to 10 years for the body to completely change over.
Mhm.
Cells, bones, this, that, right? So let's just play with that one. So 7 to 10 years, people have really deconditioned. They are on their path. They're on their journey. They are now at this place where it's not about the self anymore. And so if we go to self actualization, they've self actualized and now they're into self transcendence. And so we are working with a set of humans that are emotionally regulated, that are able to have more compassion and awareness for others, that are able to build systems, that are able to work together, that have let go of ownership, that, um, yeah, that are able to really be one human race. And so when we're in that world, what's fun is not even everyone has to agree because there needs to be some form of disagreement as that will continue to keep us honest. And when you look at charts, you'll see that there are people who are there. They're like, it's not like everybody's all on the same page. If I took up all the human designs and all the purposes and put them together, there are some people that need to be against so that we can understand why we're for. And then for it to really work, though, there is enough of a mass of those people. And then we need about 15 billionaires to heal their childhood trauma and switch over into this modality of this version of the world. And when that happens, that'll be enough for the entire world to flip.
Hmm.
So that's the version. The reality is like with the imbalance of power, this would need to get into the hands of enough of the few that have the resources so that it can truly impact the world.
Yeah. That's a beautiful vision. And I think you are one of those people who may be impacting one of those billionaires in the coming
I
years.
hope so. I have one multi-billionaire that I work with right now,
Mm.
but it's a little bit of a dance with him. He's not fully locked in yet. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But
He's transitioning. He's relearning.
I don't even know if he's at that point yet. But at least we are having conversations. And so that's where it starts. But yeah, that is what to me would be a realistic plan instead of just telling you like, oh, we're all gonna just love humans and eat gut
Right.
bears together. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important for people to understand is that, there is this idea that we can dream reality into existence, but in the 3D in the physical world, there has to be action taken. You can't just dream into the 3D these ideas. You can express, you can be the vocalist that is sharing those ideas, but somebody, some humans have to create, have to build, have to put into this world the physical structure for these new ideas to be put into place. And I think that we are at a very I don't think you're getting it on the news. You're not really learning about these new systems that are being created from your everyday experience, but that these systems are being created, that there are a number of billionaires that are going through this evolution in their consciousness. And they are quietly building the systems that, as many, many more people begin to wake up, begin to better understand who they are and better understand, their subconscious programming, that the systems will already be available, will be ready to scale, and will be pretty much this shift will be almost like a light switch turning on, where in a 2 or 3 or 4 year period, we're going to go through this massive shift, moving us into at least a more equitable. It might not be, this idea of utopia quite yet, but it'll be moving towards that utopia. You moving towards this more equitable version of humanity.
Yeah, I think it's certainly in process. And I hope that it's kind of like I was saying, as I was moving through my journey, there was this part where I thought I was there,
Mhm.
but I was still like being like, oh, God is giving me my next marketing plan. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. That's like, no, Shebala, not that. And it's a really funny thing, the action thing. There is almost like a letting go of action. And then it does come back and it's interesting. It's almost like a letting go of action and then an adjustment of action. Like sometimes you are the person who just has the idea and your wisdom shifts somebody else's action. There's this really fun dance. I think the question is the people who have the resources and are moving through this, do they get connected to the right guides and that are going to give them true access to their guidance? And do they get to the place of really thinking and I would say feeling from a place of unlimited love instead of being in their head, thinking like still being in a portion of ego. Because there is another version of this. And it's funny, as you were saying, the billionaire, as we're talking about the billionaires, I've also been around multiple billionaires who have these spiritual, they like own huge retreats, resorts, spiritual things. They're kind of doing them behind the scenes. And yet I will go there and be like, oh my gosh, you've gone deep on your personal journey, but you really have not cleaned up your stuff related to
Mm.
partnership. It's often that one, by the way. Like you haven't really cleaned up that. And so all the things that you're building, though in some ways they come with the best intention, the vibration is off and you're missing that. And therefore we're not quite there. And so I do think that is the question of like, do they get to the place? And the cool thing is when you continue on the journey in earnest, you do. So hopefully we get there.
Yeah.
But that's yeah. I
It's just like our personal journeys, right? You think you're there and then you go a deeper level. And, with these people, when they think that they're there, they have the means to create these
these
massive
massive
systems.
systems. Yeah.
Exactly. But then they go through another evolution and they again have the means to create another massive system. And it's just an iteration, continually evolving. It's an evolution versus this like destination.
I think the one thing that's missing though, and if we could get here, then we can get to your world. And the world I want to be into, transparency.
Mm-hmm.
People are not honest. They build these massive systems and say, this is the way. The I don't know, like actually this is another billionaire that I met. I paid quite a bit to go to his
Mastermind or
pretty,
something.
no, it was a whole retreat property,
Uh,
included medicine. And he actually was the one who said, the more I know, the more I don't know. He also was like, I really don't know. And yet the business he built suggested he knew.
mm,
And he's been running that for years and he's building it deeper and deeper in that way. And if he could just say, this is my best guess for right now, but I'm still on my journey, that would open up a whole world. Same. One of the people that I learned the most from in terms of inherited family trauma completely lied in his book. He knew there was doubt around his birth story, etc., and that's a core of his book. Didn't state it. Built this massive brand, helps so many people, but not stating that. Massive. It's a big. So when you state the truth about where you are in your journey, what you're still working on, and you're transparent, it creates an opening for people to understand that people can have so much wisdom and still be learning.
mm,
And it's that difference. For me, it's like, and will they be transparent? Because if they can be transparent, yeah, we'll get places. But when they're not transparent and still trying to say, here's what we're doing and this is the way, that's where it's basically leading people onto a path of confusion. And I actually think that's the biggest problem in the spiritual space today. Um, and if that can get cleared up, it'll make a massive difference. It's just that people, for some reason, believe that I think it's ego, but they believe that they need to have that authority. And it essentially nets out with brainwashing um, a lot of desperate people and putting them into a place where they forget that they too get to shape this.
yeah. Yeah, I think that it's the difference between authority and authenticity. If they could just be authentic instead of the authority, it would be a much clearer version of what is needed, that medicine that they're giving, whatever that is.
And we'd get there much faster, the whole thing.
So much faster. But again, we are not in control of time. So we will get there when we get there.
That too. Well, let's say with less pain. How about that?
Less pain. Exactly. Well,
Less.
Shebala, this has been wonderful. If people are looking to connect with you, they want to get a one-on-one, they want to maybe buy some of your candles, what's the best place to get in contact with you?
Yep. They can come to shebala.com, shebala.com. As you mentioned, I have a candle line. I do one-on-ones. They can hire me as their medicine woman in residence. So I come and work with your company for at least 10 hours. And then I also have retreats coming up as well in Tulum.
Beautiful. When are those retreats?
So we have one in January of 2026 and one in February of 2026. The January one is going to focus on the personal journey. And then February is going to be over Valentine's Day, and we'll work on partnership journeys as well. And I'll be there. I have a co-host that's bringing in art, and then all of my local curanderas are going to come through. It's going to be a very special journey where we're working on all levels of healing.
Perfect. Well, those sound wonderful. I may be interested myself. So
Well, come on through.
beautiful. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you for coming on the show, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again for listening to Changing the Channel with Joe Garner. If you enjoyed the show, please follow the podcast, hit the bell to know when a new show comes out, share with a friend, and rate us on whatever platform you're tuning in from. It helps get these messages out to more people to create the collective shift in reality we are here to experience. Make sure you interact with the Q&A and poll sections of the show so I can continue to provide content you enjoy. Finally, check out my website in the show notes to become a VIP of Changing the Channel and join the shift that is happening.